Good evening, everybody. Hi, welcome back to a fun week. It is, I need to, there's a Discord, I believe there. Anyways, welcome, guys. It is Tuesday night, and this is something, Kurt with the spoiler. No. Next question. Yes, we're going to get to this. We're going to get to this topic now, but anyways, yes. Friend of the show, Kurt, over at Uncivil Law. Kurt was live today. I don't know what I forget what he was doing right off the top of my head, but I saw you were live, Kurt. Anyways, guys, give Kurt a check over at Uncivil Law. You know, doing the good fight over there. And Keopeth says he's not gay, he's a lawyer. Yes. I assume you're talking to me here. So on SB Sellers, yes, the 19th Amendment destroyed America. Well, yes. But we are going to get to that. We are going to get to that here. So, guys, welcome to the show. Obviously, I'm Sean. I'm a potentially criminal. I'm an attorney in the Cleveland, Ohio area. And today, this is something that came out yesterday. And it's another one of these things where, depending on how, like, there's people on one side going like, oh, my God, America's lost. And then there's other people on the other side like, oh, my God, big win. It's a good win for the Trump administration, but it's not like the biggest win. It's pretty much like a duh kind of win. That's how I look at it. So that is, yeah, Wicker v. Filburn destroyed America. Yes. Yes. Okay, and then yes, duh, fat man, yes. Yes, it's nothing ever happens o'clock. And that's really what this is. But I think it's important to see the way things are being put together, the way things are being set up. And I just, once again, it's one of these times where it's just like everybody just needs to like take a breath, close your eyes and give me your hand, ooh, darling. If you could feel my heart beating, you might understand. But anyways, it's important just to relax. It's important to take a break. Let it go out, and let's see what everybody freaks out for a day over. Ag says Marbury versus Madison was the real end of times ruling. Yeah, I mean, but if a court doesn't establish it as the authority to do what it does, it's not really a branch then. It would be basically the bitch to the executive and the legislator. So, I mean, yeah, you could say that it was an unlawful usurpation of power, but then there's no judicial review. So what does the court actually do on a case? Like, I can agree that Marbury versus Madison was a usurpation of power, but let's say Marbury versus Madison, they're like, oh, we can't do it. Well, then what the fuck do they do as a court? Like, that becomes an issue. Jack says, what happened? I'm not watching the news. Well, we'll get to that. Tech guy says we should have kept the Articles of Confederation. Oh. T-Rex and Crypto Travels is saying, I'm just saying you should try to quote Dred Scott in something. It's just D-R-E-D, not Dread like Club Dread. It's just like D-R-E-D. It's something, it's technically still valid law. Yes, there's also Buck v. Bell, which is valid law. There's a couple of cases where you're like, there's a lot of fucked up shit out there that's still valid case law. So that is true. And good to see all of you guys out here tonight. Let's see. Yes, the 17th Amendment was also really bad. And then real quick, Pseudo Snark for $20. It's good to see you, man. I know you've been busy. You got your new baby. Yeah, the new house coming in law school. Well, yeah, so you definitely got your hands full. House of Shekels says Shekels is for my absences, good sir. Thank you for being here, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you for being here. There are alien orbs off the coast of Yemen. No, but apparently a couple of Garan drones that totally probably weren't launched by the Ukrainians landed in eastern Poland. So it's like, ooh, buddy. We'll see what's going on out there tonight. Jefferson Post says without Marbury, the court would be swamped. Without Marbury, the court would be like, we can't rule. Without Marbury, there's like, they'd be like, well, we can't get involved. I think ultimately is what you look at there. So, yes, communism in Nepal got rocked today. Yes. Nepal is having a revolution. The Nepalese government did try to restrict things, like they tried to ban social media and a bunch of other crazy shit. And the people basically went and lit parliament on fire. And there's video of like the finance minister being chased through the street as people try to kick his ass. So there's some good news out there. There's some dubs for the good guys today. Yes, do not let evil take root. That's correct. That is correct. Yes, Greta had a surprise last night. Yes, it looks like Greta and her group might have been drone striked. Looks like it. Maybe. Although, it wouldn't surprise me if it was a false flag. Wouldn't surprise me if it was a false flag. So, Eric says one dude was beating that Nepal guy. Do you watch the whole crowd? That whole crowd was chasing that guy. They wanted to kick his ass. So, no, Greta's still alive, sadly. Letty's been a member for 11 months. Real quick, we'll get started, chat. Been a member for 11 months. Thank you for your support, man. Thank you. 11 months. So I had a lot of fun on last night's collab. Yes, guys, hung out with Rob Knorr from Normal Americans. Guys, Rob is great. He's always a pleasure to talk to. I enjoy him just because, he is a very honest. He's very open about what he feels and what he thinks. And he's a very sharp guy. Very, very sharp guy. I appreciate his intelligence. It's just everything about him. Like I said, he does great. Been putting foot to ass to Destiny lately. You're like, that's not a bad character trait as well. So, Bear Frozen says, wait, but yeah, thank you for being there last night, guys. And it's great. Yes, Rob, that is the one thing for Rob. Yes. Being from Pennsylvania, and it's funny because he's probably, I bet Rob's about an hour or so. When Rob kind of talks about where he's from, and he mentioned some of those locations, I'm like, I know exactly the area he's talking about pretty much. I'm pretty sure like Rob and I are only like about an hour, maybe an hour and a half at most away from each other. So maybe at some point I'll see if Rob and see if you just meet up and we can like bro out somewhere. Not even do a live, but just like sup king type of moment. So, but yes, he is a Yinzer, and that is something. Nobody's perfect. Nobody is perfect, chat, but we all try. And we all fall short in the face of God. Hold on. So Bella's saying it wasn't a drone unless it's the shittiest science fair project in history. The sound is a boat motor. Where is that? Whatever that flying thing is, lit up thing coming in is. I don't know. Two bearded fats yelling about politics. Yeah, it's like CNN. Except one of them is probably transgender and black. And then real quick, we'll get started here. Fair Frozen 55 for $10. Says the fall of communism somewhere? I'll buy that for $1. Or Ted in this case. Whoa, wait, what? Yeah, no, I don't, nothing about Greta's, that picture of Greta with the shirt where like the tits are hanging out of it. That's not her. That's a Photoshop. So yeah, don't worry about those. Don't worry about those socialist titties anyway. They try to hypnotize you. So. Oh, as a flare, they misfire themselves. Okay, well, there you go. So they really did. They tarted themselves up. So too bad. I wish it was a drone. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of wish it really was. But c'est la vie. C'est la vie. All right, guys, let's get started. So what is the problem here? What's going on? Well, we need to go back to what's going on in LA. You guys are aware in LA. Oh, Chugi Show, yes. Poland is on high alert. U.S. jets have been scrambled. Yeah, there's like F-35s are up in the air right now. A couple of them have like them and some other, electronic airborne warning aircraft are alive and flying around. They all have their ATIS B on, which I'm surprised they do right now because they could turn that off and go straight to military encrypted identification. But they still have their ATIS B on according to Flight Tracker, so it's a little weird they're doing that. I don't understand how you I don't understand how you I don't understand that, but yeah, it's getting interesting. If you guys know where Rzeszów, Poland is, that's way out in the eastern Poland. Rzeszów is also it looks like it's spelled Rezhov or Rezhwow, but it's Rzeszów because Polish. It's one of the major points where one of the marshaling areas for military aid that would be going across the border into Ukraine. It's one of the bigger areas. It's also the big airport the U.S. runs a lot of air assets out of. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. We'll see. Sweet Tooth Fairy says, what is going on? A couple of Garan drones, those things that look like flying Doritos, which I still think you can buy models for them. I think it'd be fun to do one night. But this is basically, actually here, this is actually a really good picture of it. This is a Garan. Basically, think of it as a big glider with a lawnmower engine stuck on the back of it. And when there's videos of them, they sound like they're going like this way. Bzzz, like they sound like lawnmowers flying by. And then the head is a warhead. And eventually it runs out of fuel at a pre-positioned point and goes. So, yeah. Degazane says, do you read chat? Yes, I do. I do read chat. If you've said something, I apologize for not seeing it. So. But yes, I do. Even Kick Chat, apparently. Yes. Yes. Amateur Iconoclast is a poor Slav cruise missile. Yes, but the Garan is not actually Russian. It's the Iranian Shahed drone that the Russians have kind of modified and started building up on their own and building bigger. But yeah, it's basically just, it's a long-range drone. They're dirt cheap. You could throw tons of them up in the air. There are commercial flights still going on over Poland, though. Yes, but by Rzeszów, there's like a NOTAM. The airport's closed, so yeah. Let me see here. I didn't see these. Hold on here. Let me see. Okay, we'll go with these two out of the way first. Ag Biochemist, member for 29 months. It's a long time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the support. Says, we have reached the end of democracy. Yes, we have, allegedly. Then Whiskey 77, who's been a member for 15 months. Guys, remember Whiskey 77 and 3 Beers are Assholes React. They are every Sunday night at 9 p.m. They also went live on Sunday afternoon covering Alan Jackson when he prosecuted Phil Spector for the murder trial that he was involved in, destroying Phil Spector's hired medical expert. But yes, he's saying late, gay, and cringe. Well, yes, of course. That's the one time where, instead of like fast, cheap, and what is it? You could have fast, cheap, and quality. You can only pick two. See, but when it's late, gay, and cringe, you get all three. That's the true beauty of this. So that is where we are. Okay, now, but let's get to this story here. Okay, guys, so all this Supreme Court stuff that just happened all starts out in LA. It all starts out in the great state of California. And it's about ICE and what they've been doing as part of their enforcement patrols. Because believe it or not, chat, for those of you who may not know, there are a lot of illegals in California. And you're like, It's almost like they share a border or something. They do. They do. And as much as I hate to say this, just because not everybody is Mr. Not everybody, like watching Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego as a kid. We'll start with this. We'll start with this here. So this is California right here. Here's California. This is California up here. This down here is Mexico. And you can see Mexico goes all the way along. I went a little too far. Wait, that's what the Mexicans want. No, you don't get that, Mexico. But here's Mexico. It goes all, it's our southern neighbor. So California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Tejas all share a border with Mexico. And they're rampant. Illegal migration that's happened over the decades. That 10 million number we've heard, that was when Ronald Reagan in 1986 basically gave them amnesty. It's like 30, 40 million now. It's not 10 million anymore. Another says, where does Ethan Ralph live? Ethan Ralph lives in Merida. No, I think I didn't say in French like Merida, like fuck. No, he lives in Merida. Down here on the Yucatan Peninsula. It's actually a very nice place. And it's in the Yucatan, so it's pretty safe overall. You got Cancun, you got Playa del Carmen. It's not bad. It's actually a very nice place. Very beautiful, weather and everything like that. Now, where did this case start? This case started in federal court, United States District Court for the Central District, California. Now, you might say, wait, LA's in the Central District. Yes, it is. San Diego is the Southern District. San Francisco is the Northern District. Bakersfield is the Eastern District. And LA is the Central District. So that is what we have here. Okay. So this is federal court. And multiple people, including this guy, Pedro Vasquez Perdomo, amongst others, sued Kristi Noem and the Department of Homeland Security, which is what ICE is part of. So what happened? Well, this is the court's order. This is the order the court put together. And the order kind of sums up, even though this order is not pro-Trump, the facts in it are very important. Helps us understand what we're looking at here. David says Nick is streaming too. It's like Sophie's Choice. Well, you could make the easier choice and just throw both kids on the train. All right. So anyway, this is the case here. So it talks about starting off on June 6, 2025. Federal law enforcement arrived in Los Angeles to participate in what has been described as the largest mass deportation operation in history. Yes, the government started cracking down on a place where there's a shitload of illegals. What? Who could have foreseen this? There were things that this is the thing here, though. There are two key features that are big in this. And this court has determined that they're both unconstitutional. And the first one is these roving patrols that are indiscriminately rounding up numerous individuals without reasonable suspicion, and having done so, denying these individuals access to lawyers who can help them navigate the legal process. And they say, on this, the government agrees roving patrols without reasonable suspicion violate the Fourth Amendment. Yes, and denying access to lawyers violates the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Now, here's the issue. The court, obviously, yes, the government agrees, but the government's not doing anything illegal with the Fourth Amendment thing. And we'll get to that. They says, what the federal government had this court believe in the face of a mountain of evidence is that none of this is actually happening. Well, it's happening not like you think it is. And most of the questions before this court are fairly simple. And it says, can the government conduct immigration enforcement on a large scale in LA? Yes, it may. Well, yes, it has the authority to do so. Do all individuals, regardless of immigration status, share in the rights guaranteed by the 4th and 5th Amendment to the Constitution? Yeah, they do. They do. You may not like it, but right now that's the way it's being held. It says, is it illegal to conduct roving patrols which identify people based upon race alone? Aggressively questioning them and detaining them without a warrant, without their consent, and without reasonable suspicion they are without status. Yes. Based upon race alone. Notice, race alone. Is it unlawful to prevent people from having access to lawyers who can help them in immigration court? Yeah, you're not allowed to do that. You're entitled to have legal help in immigration court. So, what is the issue here? So, they said the government's indeed conducting roving patrols without reasonable suspicion. And are they denying access to the lawyers? And the court decides that they are. So, that part's important here. So, we get to the factual backgrounds of all of this. And here are some of the things here. You see this guy here, Pedro Vasquez Perdomo, Jorge Hernandez Viramontes is another person we're talking about. Jason Brian Gavidia. I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to say it. I tried, chat. You're going to see people here, and these guys are being held in a federal building, B18. That's the one we watched video of being under siege. It's a federal detainment area. So these are the main people here. These are the 3 guys that we're looking at here. So let's get to what actually happened to them. So what happened here? So they talk about at B18 is a building at 300 North Los Angeles Street, referred to as B18. It's a facility for immigrant detainees to temporarily house them so they can be released or transported to a long-term detention facility. And it says individuals taken there are being kept in small windowless rooms. You know, that happens when you're in fucking jail. With dozens or more in cramped quarters. Some are so cramped you can't sit, let alone lie down for hours at a time. And it says, as of June 20th, over 300 individuals were being held. Yeah, well, when you do a massive immigration raid, or when, you know, one of the places I used to practice in outside Toledo, the county did a fucking warrant roundup. And they found all the people they had warrants for, and they went out and hunted as many of them down as they could every once in a while. And guess what? They blew up the fucking jail by doing that. But that's what they get to do. Now, they go on to talk about here about, yes, they're being deprived of food. Oh, no, they're being denied access to medical care. They claim that there's all kinds of issues here. They claim that they can't provide basic hygiene. I don't really know. You know, the denial of access to counsel. That's not really the big one here. The big one here is we're getting to the officially sanctioned conduct. In January, the administration gave ICE field offices an arrest quota of 75 arrests a day. Can we meet the goal, chat? Can we meet the goal? It sounds like it. The administration also shut down multiple oversight agencies. The administration set a new quota of 3,000 arrests per day and reportedly threatened job consequences if officials failed to meet arrest quotas. God bless the goal! God bless the goal, chat. Pitchlock reposted this. Thank you, man. Thank you very much. But God bless the goal, chat. Those are rookie numbers. Well, they're trying. They're trying real hard. So we talk about and this is where we get to the issues here. Individual experiences. So Pedro Vasquez Perdomo was waiting at a bus stop across the street from a donut shop with several co-workers to be picked up for a job. Okay, so he's a day laborer, it looks like, based on this alone. About 4 cars converged on location. About a half a dozen masked agents jumped out of either side of him. They had weapons and masks and did not identify themselves. I think he probably figured out who they were very quickly. He tried to leave, okay, but he was surrounded, grabbed, handcuffed, and put in the vehicles. No warrant was shown. There's no requirement for a warrant to be shown. There is no judicial warrant. It's an administrative warrant. If there is one, if they determine that you're here illegally, they don't need a warrant. They can arrest you. It was only after he was brought to a nearby parking lot they checked his identification. And that does kind of lead to the issue of, like, what was this guy doing? The agents did not inform him they were immigration officers authorized to make an arrest or the basis. Well, they don't have to right away. At the time of this action, Vasquez has been transported and was being held at B18. There he experienced extremely unsanitary conditions, was given little to drink, and slept on the floor. Once again, you're trusting the guys who say this. I don't know about that. Jefferson Post says, ICE starts arresting a Freebird to make the goal. Just having that blare out everywhere they go. Yes. And Alpha Fox, yes. How you doing, man? Saying, across from a donut shop, i.e. at a Home Depot. Yeah, I'm kind of guessing that's where it is. And I didn't look that up before when I read this. But, let's check that out real quick. Where is Winchell's Donuts? Winchell's Donuts. Loss. Oh, there's a bunch of them. Winchell's Donut House. I mean, is there a... There's a bunch of them. But yes, I have a feeling this guy was hanging out with a bunch of Mexicans, at Home Depot. They're in Pasadena. No, that's why I couldn't find this one here. Hold on. Pasadena. Yeah, here we go. Winchell's Donuts near Pasadena. It could be the little... Yeah. Well, actually, it's not a... I think it might be this one, chat here. But look at this one. It's not a Home Depot, but look what they're hanging out next to. A big old fucking Ace Hardware store. Oh, imagine that. Oh, I think I know what they were doing. Let's see at this one. Is this one next to a Home Depot? This one next to a Home Depot? Yeah. Is this... Well, actually, no, that's not a Home Depot. So I think it was that one. I think we found that right one, chat. Next to a big old fucking hardware store. Imagine my shock. Imagine your shock. Imagine that, chat. Now let's get to the next two guys, and then I saw you guys send a bunch of stuff here. I'll catch it in a second. In the early morning of June 18th in Pasadena, Orsoto was waiting to be picked up with his co-worker. So these two guys were hanging out together. When federal agents approached, he tried to run, but one of the agents caught up to him and pointed a taser at his head and said, "Stop or I'll use it." That's how that works. He was handcuffed and put in a vehicle. It was only after he was brought to a nearby CVS parking lot. They asked if he had papers. No warrant was shown. They don't need to show. Agents did not inform they were immigration officers authorized to make arrests, and allegedly, according to whom. At the time, he was transported and held at B18. The facility was full, and when people asked for help, officers told him there was no food, no water, and no medicine. Once again, I think a load of horse shit. And today he remains at the ICE processing center nearby. Sounds like he wasn't valid. Another guy was hanging out. Villegas Molina was hanging out waiting with the other guys. And when they approached, they yelled at him not to run, even though he was still in calm. Yeah, they're going to tell you, don't run away. Stay where you are. He was told to provide identification. He provided his California ID. That's not enough to show who you are. I mean, that's enough to show who you are. But the agent kept questioning him. He's allowed to question him if he's being detained. Now, is he free to go? That's where you can ask that stuff. They said this guy's also been transported and being held at B18. Notice what you don't see right here, saying they're U.S. citizens. Notice you're not seeing that here. Now, another guy. This one's actually kind of funny. Here. This guy, Hernandez Viramontes, is working at a car wash where he worked for 10 years. When immigration agents arrived during his visit, they didn't identify themselves. They asked him whether he was a citizen. He replied he was a dual citizen of the U.S. and Mexico. When they asked for ID, he provided it. They then said his ID was not enough because he did not have his passport, and they were taking him. During this time, he did not know whether they were going to take him to a detention center. Okay, so what? They verified his citizenship and about 20 minutes later brought him back to the car wash. Okay. So they arrested him. They thought they had cause. They verified, no, we don't. We let him back out. When agents brought him back to the car wash, they did not apologize. As much as I'd like them to do so, that's not a fucking, like, okay. So this is now, they said shortly after he got returned, another group of agents raided the car wash again. That's actually kind of fun. Like, I bet it's not funny to go through it again. But that is kind of funny. Like, you just got rousted by the ICE guys, and as soon as they drop you off, more ICE, like, the next squad shows up and is, like, sweeping through again. Like, that would be very tiresome. That would be very fucking annoying. It is kind of funny. That is kind of funny there. I mean, that would be very shitty luck. That'd be very shitty luck. And then there's another guy, Gavita, a U.S. citizen, was at a tow yard in L.A. And these are like, it's like the most Home Depot, a car wash, and a scrapyard. Sure, it's not a chop shop. Was visited by immigration agents conducting a patrol. They said hearing someone say immigration may be at the premise. The guy went outside to confirm. At the time, his clothes were dirty from working on his car. On the sidewalk outside the gate, they saw federal agents step between two cars. Soon after, he saw agents wearing similar vests with the words Border Patrol, Federal Agent. And he saw that two of them had handguns and a military-style rifle. Oh, no. When he attempted to head back inside, an agent said, "Stop right there." When they approached him, another agent ran toward him and asked if he's American. Gavita told him, yes, that he is an American. He's an American multiple times. The agent responded by asking, "What hospital were you born in?" And you know what? Like, that does sound like a good idea. But it's kind of like those, oh God, what, if you don't know the answer, it's like, who, you see these World War II movies where they're dealing with the Germans at the Battle of the Bulge and the German paratroopers who were disguised as Americans. And you'd ask them, like, who was the shortstop for the Yankees last year? Well, if you don't know baseball, you don't know. Or this is a thing where there are times where you're going to know answers and you're going to do things. Like, if you guys have seen The Mighty Eighth, when the resistance is helping escort the downed airmen away, they suss out the infiltrators by asking them the questions like, Babe Ruth played for who? And they're like, Babe Ruth didn't play for them. And they ask him to write down the dates. There's things you can do to suss out somebody. But just if they don't know what hospital they're born at, like, I don't necessarily know people remember. I know what hospital I was born at, but not everybody would. And let's say it's a hospital that, like, shut down like 25 years ago. Is that federal agent going to fucking know? He said he didn't know. The agent repeated the same question. Each time he said, "I don't know." At that point, they pushed him up against the fence, put his hands behind the back, and twisted his arm. Yes, getting handcuffed. He had been on his phone and they took away his phone. Yeah, well. He claimed they were hurting him and he said, "American, what hospital were you born in?" And he said he didn't know and he said East LA. Then he told the agents he could show him his real ID, which having a real ID is very important because it's supposed to be hard to have one if you're not an American. Although like California, it's not the case. And this is one of those deals where having ID doesn't mean much in a state where anybody can get an ID. You do this here in Ohio, it's harder to get an ID if you're, you can't get IDs. But in California, everybody already gets an ID. We already know this. So at some point, it's like, that's not a fair measurement of things. So they hadn't asked his ID. When he showed his real ID, one of them took it from him. Ultimately, it took about 20 minutes to get his phone back, but the agents never returned his ID. Which, yeah, I mean, like, I don't think they're like, "Oh, fuck this guy." It's just, dude has it, tucks it in his vest, and then, like, they're fucking around after a while. I'm like, "Oh, shit, I still have it." So these are the issues, these stops. Now, there are other problems about the guys, whether or not they've been denied legal services. I'm not worried about that. What happened in the meantime, there was a preliminary injunction set out, and we talked about the factors. And they said accordingly, and ultimately says this order is not a final decision on the merits, nor is it a decision on the merits of the assertions either party made in support of a claim. So they talk about there were some ex parte communications here. And they talk about ultimately here they talk about whether or not you're entitled to a TRO on an ex parte basis. And they say that they delayed the filing of the 1AC and the 2 TROs that are before the First Amendment complaint and the 2 TROs before this court by over a month. And they elected not to file a new case, but instead joined a largely mooted habeas petition. And that's how this started. One of those guys in detention had a habeas petition, and they strapped all this shit onto it. So once again, you're starting to see the lawfare kind of fall out of this here. So they go on here, and the court says actually what they did's fine, and of course they do. Of course they do. They point out that the access and detention plaintiffs have shown they have standing. And yes, their ability to engage in representation of immigrants is at the core of a founding mission. And that's regarding them having attorneys. So we're not worried about that. Once again, we're getting down to the actual showings of what's going on. So we want to address the issues of the roving patrols. So we're not worried about the access detention. Again, we're not worried about access detention. Did I miss? They talk about bond not being here, but the stop and arrest TRO is the one we want. But we get too far here. We need to catch up on a couple of things real quick. Been there, done that for 17 months. Thank you for being here. It says ice, ice, baby. Boom, chicka, boom, ding, 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 ding. You quote ice, vanilla ice. DF88 for $4.99 says, those Garand drones have a wicked sounding dive. The Dorito of death. Stop-a-holes. Yes. Stop-a-holy. Oh, God, I can't do Ethan Ralph. I can't do PPP doing Ethan Ralph in a Russian accent. Holy is how you would say it. Hexy for $2 says, why do illegals have 4th and 5th Amendment rights? Everybody's entitled to some basic. You have rights just by being inside the United States. Because otherwise, if you don't have a 4th or 5th Amendment right, what's to stop the police from, like, if you're from France visiting, you're suspected of a crime, the police beating a confession out of you with a phone book? I mean, you do have some rights by simply being here. And that's just in general. Like, you generally have applicability of basic legal protections, or, like, basic laws apply to you. And if we want laws to apply to you, then if you want the law to apply to you, you should be entitled to the protections of the laws. I think that's a fairly reasonable argument. Whiskey 77 says, I'll stick with Sean. I'm fairly sure he hasn't swallowed Aaron's juice. Thank you. And then Whiskey 77 for 20 subs. All right, chat. Yes. Thank you for the support. Here. And yeah, get us a big old woo tonight. Get a couple out of you. Thank you, Whiskey, for your support, your generosity. And then Soul in the Leak for 100 Argentine pesos says, suffer, America. Bet you can't get a shipping container rental in a better part of Mexico like the Ralph Mail, bish. Very true. Very, very true. Very true. T-Rex and Crypto Travels for $4.99. It says, I can almost guarantee the Fulton County Jail is as bad, if not worse, than this place. Well, unlike the other ones, we actually know for sure Fulton County's bad. Remember, guys, when it comes to the detainees in these ICE cases, remember during Trump's first administration where they had some lady, she's like, they were making us drink out of toilets. It's like, no, they weren't. They had one of those setups where the sink and toilet are attached as one piece with the metal, like the prison setup. And, they were like, we're drinking out of the toilets. That's these prison toilet and sink combos. And, when you're dealing with illiterate third worlders, they think they're drinking out of a toilet because they can't figure things out. So they're like, oh no, they're making us drink out of the toilet. It's like, no, you retard. But they don't know any better because they're idiots. They have a shared supply of drinking water, of potable water. But it's because most of them probably how many of them have running water back in the old country. So remember, take a grain of salt when they tell you something's happening. Take it, be careful. And then Jim says, recognize some of those when you get a chance. Yep, we got you caught up there. So it is something there. Meme Coin Cabal says, hey, if you're real, show 2 fingers. Like on the same hand? Or like, do you want separate hands? Like 2 and 2? Or do you just want 1 and then 1? Like, what do you want? Do you want like these 2 fingers? Do you want like these 2 fingers? Do you want these 2 fingers? I don't know which 2 fingers you want. So they talk about, though, they're saying the court has jurisdiction here. We're not necessarily worried about the court having jurisdiction. It's, the court's going to find itself as jurisdiction. This is where it gets to the point of the requested TRO is specific. Now, obviously, ICE is saying we're not just profiling people because they look like Mexicans. Notice they're only going to certain places and going after people. But the court has started it this way. So what are they saying here? Here are the stops seek to enjoin plaintiffs from conducting detentive stops without legally required suspicion and solely from relying on 4 enumerated factors alone or in combination. So notice, it's not just the idea the government is just stopping all brown people and it's the end of America. No. The 4 enumerated factors. So what are your 4 factors that ICE is using? Your apparent race or ethnicity, speaking Spanish or speaking English with an accent, your presence at a particular location, and the type of work one does. So notice, we're not just going after, you're walking down the street and you got your shirt buttoned at the top and you got your shades on and you got a beanie down over your eyes. You're just walking around going like, ole. No, they're not just going after everybody like that. No, they're doing this with additional factors. But it says solely relying on. They say in order of these above, are they narrowly tailored to remedy the specific issues? And yes, they think so. And they consider this an unconstitutional policy of considering race as a factor in determining where to conduct patrol operations and whom to investigate for civil immigration violations. And it says it is not a mere obey the law injunction. And it does not remotely suggest that it is, given the vagueness of the purported injunctions here. So what are they arguing here? They say the court finds a TRO is specific. The court discusses below the likelihood of success on the merits and why this is narrowly tailored. So they argue they're standing. I don't think there is standing here, but remember, the court's going to want it because they want to do it. They put out the one guy, despite being a U.S. citizen, he was stopped and pushed up against the metal gated fence and questioned. And he says, it was the worst experience I've ever felt. I felt like I was going to die. In fact, one agent literally racked a chamber in his rifle, and going forward, I am disturbed and deeply concerned that federal agents will stop me and violate my rights again for some reason. Now, do I think for this guy it probably was really fucking annoying? It was really horrible? Sure. I don't think this guy's lying. I bet it really fucking sucked. But did the one guy rack, yes, because they have him up against the fence, and the guy standing with the AR-15 goes, ka-chunk. It's like, no, I don't see that. I felt like I was going to die. No. But would I say, would it be fun to get arrested? No, I'd be fucking pissed off about it. And yes, given his situation, is he likely to run into the feds again at some point? Sure. Steve says rack the chamber, meaning he chambered around. So pulled the charging handle back, or if it's an AR-15, hit the bolt release. So he chambered around. And the court finds that this guy has Article 3 standing requirements. And, he suffered an invasion of a legally protected interest, which is concrete and actual or imminent. It's also an issue that it could happen again. I think it could happen again. So they go through and they say that there has not been, the government has said there wasn't a requisite showing that this would happen again. Well, I mean, they're still doing it. They're still doing it. They're still doing it. So yeah, it's going to happen. And they point out numerous individuals have been subjected to multiple stops, including Gavita. No evidence suggests a likelihood of recurrent injury. And they say that we can get a preliminary injunction even though there isn't a class certification. Remember, this goes back to what the Supreme Court has said. Like, you can't do this shit. Once again, we're dealing with these massive TROs. And the Supreme Court's already said, like, no, we don't like these. We don't like these. Now it says, to be clear, to provide complete relief, this court must enjoin the conduct of all law enforcement engaged in immigration enforcement throughout the district. Now notice, it's not doing it nationwide. And it says, given how these enforcement actions appear to have been conducted, it would be a fantasy to expect law enforcement could and would inquire whether a given individual is among the named stop plaintiffs before proceeding with a seizure. And that's true, because they're going to say, hey, are you Bob Velasquez? And guess what? Every guy's going to go, see, that's me. Me llamo Bob. So there's no way you could do this. There's no way you could do that. So they've established they're likely to succeed on the merits. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. But remember, this is a judge. This trial judge is like, I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win. But we don't have to worry about that. And they say these arrests are likely to succeed in showing seizures requiring reasonable suspicion have occurred. And they point out that, once again, yes, you have to require reasonable suspicion. And it says, generally speaking, the officer's action should rise to a level of seizure if any of the following occurs. And here's where you get to it. Is there a threatening presence of several officers? The display of a weapon? Yes, because these all indicate you're not free to go. Physical touching, and the use of language or tone indicating compliance with the request might be compelled. Yes, and that's true. All that shows you're going to get forced to do something. Now, they point out, like, what happens here. Well, they roll up in large, unmarked, tinted cars. They pull up, and they start getting people out. But, they're allowed to do that. And they say one of the masked men pointed what looked like a gun over his heart and yelled, "Stop or I'll use it." Once again, their declarations. I'm sure, like, then they shackled our feet and our waist and our wrist. Yes, that's how handcuffs and leg restraints work. All plaintiffs report feeling afraid and that the encounter felt like a kidnapping. They knew what the fuck was. Oh, come on. They know what the fuck was happening. It's not like the cartel was rounding them up. I didn't know who the men were, and I was afraid they would hurt me. Bullshit. Nobody screamed La Migra either, I bet. I totally believe that's how it happened. I totally believe him. Can you guys agree? Like, there's no way not to do that. So, that's true, though. There was a threatening presence of several officers. It sounds like weapons were displayed, people were touched, and the use of language. I agree with all that. They were definitely being seized. But did they have reasonable suspicion? And notice, remember, we're in the Ninth Circuit, so the guidance to seizures leads to a very liberal understanding of things here. They say that they're likely to succeed in showing these are not supported. I disagree with all of that. But ultimately, we get down to actually what does the TRO say here? And what happened here? They point out that they will suffer irreparable harm. They'll suffer. And ultimately, the conclusion here is what? Oh, wow, that jumps all the way. I hate it when it does that. So the Department of Homeland Security has to provide access to room B18 of the federal building for legal visitation by current and prospective attorneys. And they should. That's no problem for me there. Legal visitation shall be permitted 7 days a week. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that either. When you are an attorney, you get to go different visitation hours and times, and you should be allowed at different visitation times because you're not there like anybody else. Now, there might be limitations on for a minimum of 8 hours per day on business days and for a minimum of 4 hours per day on weekends and holidays. And that'll happen. That'll happen. But yes, you're not restricted the same way everybody else is, like an hour every other day, and depending on like the gender of the person you're coming to visit. Like jail visitations can be rather restrictive. But for the most part, as an attorney, if you're in jail, I can show up. All I got to do is show up. I mean, like right now, there's places around here. I can show up at the police department's like, hey, you guys have a client in custody. Can I go see him? And they'll generally make it happen. The only I can't think of any place around here right now, except for the Cuyahoga County Jail be a pain in the ass right now. But otherwise, like there's a couple jails I can go out right now and go visit a guy. They'll make it happen if they can facilitate it. So this part right here, cool. I like it. They say, should exigent circumstances, i.e. a riot, require closure for the safety of human life or the protection of property, a riot, the defendants must notify the plaintiffs as soon as practical and within 4 hours to make arrangements. No closure shall last any longer than necessary for the safety of human life or property. Well, the riots will last as long as they last. They shall provide individuals detained there with access to confidential telephone calls with their attorneys at no charge to the detainee. Such telephone calls shall not be screened, recorded, or otherwise monitored. No problem with that one. I like that one. Nothing there. You got... Oh, I'm sorry, Lone Star. I did not see that. Hold on, we'll go back here. Sorry. Hold on. Yeah, I see it. Oh, it's like I click over, it's stuck right there. Lone Star Medic for $10 says, notice, Sean. They continually forget to mention that. What country has a strict border? Is it curious? Yes. What country do they build walls around their border to keep people out? I know, isn't it? It's something you notice. But good to see you, Lone Star. Hope you're doing well, man. Hope you're doing well. I'm sorry. Like I said, I wasn't trying to rip you off there. My bad. Will Sean see chat in jail? If you're in jail, yeah, I'd come see you. I mean, depending on the situation, I might be like, yeah, it's going to wait till tomorrow, but it could. But once again, Part B, I'm totally cool with. Would I bake a cake and put a chisel in it? No, I'd probably eat it before I got to you. And it says the court, having found strong likelihood of success on the merits and equities, overwhelming favors Chirla and immigration defense, IMDEF further orders that no security shall be required under federal rules of civil procedure, meaning no bond posted when you seek your injunction. KRS says, why would you eat a chisel? Why not? They say that also they're each order to show cause, the DHS, why they should not be enjoined for further violations of the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, pending final disposition. And then the stop and application order is granted for the stop and arrest. So the defendants are enjoined for conducting detentive stops unless they have a reasonable suspicion the person to be stopped is within the U.S. in violation of law. It says they may not rely on the factors below alone or in combination. So even if they know all these together, even if all four happen, on their own, they can't be used to perform a stop except as permitted by law. So notice, even the court's like, there are going to be times where they can use it. Their race, speaking Espanol, or, say, I think, presence at a particular location, bus stop, car wash, tow yard, day labor, pickup site. Why don't you just say home improvement store, agricultural site, etc., or the type of work one does? So they're ordering again that no bond is required. Okay, well, yeah. And they move on from there and they do all this. They say Additionally, it's just if you do this, you're going to be held to explain why you're doing it. The defendants will maintain and provide documentation of tentative stops, including the factors supporting the suspicion, to plaintiff's counsel on a regular schedule, meaning as it's going on. They will develop guidance concerning how agents and officers should determine whether reasonable suspicion exists. And they will implement associated training for defendants, agents, and officers involved in immigration operations in the district. So that is the big thing here. And this was done by Maame Uashi Mensha Frimpong. That's like a ton of different ethnicities squeezed together. So that was dated July 11th. So you're like, okay, so what happened? Well, the U.S. tried to appeal to the Ninth Circuit. Ninth Circuit said, nope, we're not staying it. So what happened in the meantime? Well, yesterday, this came out from the Supreme Court, the Supremacist Court, if that's how supreme it is. And they use white paper, so you could almost argue they're like white supremacists. Meme Copium says, signed Edamame Ching Chong. Yes. Good to see you, Meme. Meme, good friend of the channel here, guys. All right. Oh, buddy. All right, real quick here. I saw some of you guys other things here. T-Rex and Crypto Travel says, I've rolled through the immigration checkpoint in Texas, and my Irish, German, redheaded ass just gets way through. Don't even stop. Yeah, that generally happens if you're at these checkpoints there. Kia Pathlick says, illegals and dual citizens are more American than any natural born. That's right. They are the best Americans by far. The bestest and only greatest Americans. Sweet Tooth Fairy's been a member for 29 months, says Clyde, proof of life. Please. Well, let me see here. Gotta move the model cart so Clyde can fit through here. Hey, Clyde! Come here, buddy. He didn't run. He came trotting around the corner like, what's up, fat man? Come here, Bubba. Come here. People want to see you. Come here. Hey. Come here. Come on. Clyde, I got your treats. Look. Come here, buddy. Hey. Clyde. Hey. Come here. Come here, Clyde. Hey. Clyde. Come on. Come on, Bubba. Up here. Come here. Hold on, Chad. I'm going to have to go grab him. Give me 1 second. Oh, yes, guys. We have him back. We have a Clyde. We have the goodest little doggo in the world. What's that, Clyde? You want to send them all back? Woof, woof. Fuck them all. Build the wall. Woof. I agree, Bubba. Very true. Very true, Bud Day. Very true. How are you doing? Well, let's get to this. Let's get back to this chat. Oh. So, I hope Ice doesn't come after Clyde. He's brown. And he doesn't speak English, so. So what do you see here? Well, you start off with so you have this here, and we start off with Supreme Court of the United States, Kristi Noem's secretary, Department of Homeland Security versus Pedro Vasquez Perdomo. It's an application for stay. So the application for stay was presented to Justice Kagan, and by her reference to the court is granted. Now notice, remember, when you are writing, you have that circuit you preside over. Justice Kagan has the Ninth Circuit. So this stay came to her, and she referred it to the entire court, which you might say, why would she do that? Clyde, I'm going to set you down, okay, Bubba? Can you give me in a woo? Give me in a woo. Come on. Give in a woo. No, he's like He's like, fat man, it is late. All right, buddy, I'm gonna set you on the ground. He's had a very laid back day today. He's been snuggling really hard with 2.0. Ow! Stepped on my toe after. But anyways, so this order entered by the United States District Court is stayed pending the disposition of the appeal in the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. So meaning that it stayed. What that TRO is on pause. Once again, another timeout that the Trump administration got. And this is what made everybody lose their fucking mind. This is what made everybody lose their goddamn mind. This is what made everybody lose their mind. You're like, wait, is that really it? Yeah. Yeah. This is what caused everybody to lose their fucking mind. So ultimately, Kavanaugh did write a concurrence. And he says, I vote to grant this. And he says that under the Immigration and Nationality Act, which is what governs our immigration here, immigration officers can interrogate any alien or person believed to be an alien as to his right or to remain in the United States. And yes, that even me or you, if they don't think you're allowed to be here, they can talk to you. And under the statute, they may briefly detain an individual for questioning if they have a reasonable suspicion based on specific articulable facts that person being questioned is an alien illegally in the United States. And that's under 8 CFR, remember, Code of Federal Regulations, 287.8B2. They also see other cases here, United States, Brigone Ponce. I also want to say nonce, but no. Another case, United States versus Arvizu. And they say the reasonable suspicion inquiry turns on the totality of the particular circumstances. And it says the government estimates that at least 15 million, it's a lot more than that, it's like 30, are in the United States illegally. It's like 30, 35 million. Many millions illegally entered just in the last few years. Very true. Thank you, Joe Biden. Thank you for that. That's what we really needed here, Joe. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joe Biden. Robin Hood says, no, they can't talk to me. I'm autistic. Sir, are you an American citizen? It's like, probably. Okay, get out of here. Dude Love says, they do this when I enter from an international flight. Yes. You know, the sovereigns, as part of the Westphalian system, going back to the Treaty of Westphalia, 1640, at the end of the 30 Years' War, established the basics for the modern nation state and how it worked. You know, and how state sovereignty takes place and how you can do that. You know, there's a lot to this, and it's the idea of Westphalian sovereignty. And that you have exclusive sovereignty over your territory. As a sovereign, you have a right to your borders. You have the right to control who comes in or out. And it's been the foundation of things now for, since 1648, over 400 years. And whatever you're doing inside your own country, you know, you have the right to govern it. So this is some basics of political. We're at the, you know, fun laws, racist, yes, but these are the basics of political philosophy that we're talking about, the touchstones of it. They say illegal immigration is especially pronounced in the Los Angeles area. Yes, among other locales in the U.S., about 10% of the people in the L.A. region are illegal in the U.S., meaning about 2 million immigrants have a total population about 20 million. I don't think we have 10 Californians here, but that means some of you guys are here illegally. Which one of you is it? Oh. Agent Ajax, no, I'm not talking about that. We're not doing that. Guys, let's focus on this stuff. So the government sometimes makes brief investigative stops to check the immigration status of those who gather in locations where people are hired for day jobs, work or appear to work in jobs like construction, landscaping, agriculture, or car washes that do not require paperwork and are therefore attracted to illegals and who do not speak much, if any, English. If the officers learn the individual they stopped is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawful in the U.S., they promptly let the individual go. Yeah, and that's what we know so far. They let him go. Notice the guys who it's not clear or aren't, they get held. It's kind of how that shirts happen. They say, if the individuals are illegally in the U.S., the officers may arrest the individual and may initiate a process for removal. The immigration stops are based on reasonable suspicion of illegal presence and have been an important component of U.S. immigration enforcement for decades. They say in this case, however, the district court enjoined them when it's based on factors such as their location where they're found, the type of work one does, speaking Spanish, or appearing of race or ethnicity. They said in order to get the stay, the moving party must demonstrate that if the district court's decision were affirmed on appeal, the court would grant certiorari in reverse. And then the moving party must also show it suffer irreparable harm. Suffer! And here's what Kavanaugh says. In my view, the government has made a sufficient showing to obtain a stay pending appeal. To begin with, the essence of the issue is the government's immigration enforcement efforts. This court would likely grant certiorari if the Court of Appeals affirmed the injunction because, yes, it is a core governmental function. Once again, Chad, like I said, Westphalian sovereignty, the ability for you to control your borders. It's one of the things that makes you a nation state is that you have a defined border. If you can't enforce it, are you really a nation state anymore? They say on two additional grounds, alternative grounds, the government has demonstrated a fair prospect of reversal. And it says first, under the decision in Los Angeles versus Lyons, the plaintiffs like Article 3 standing to seek an injunction from making the stops. And they point out that the injunctive relief doesn't not exist because they experience past harm and fear its recurrence. What matters is the reality of the threat of repeated injury. Well, that one guy, and this is why the reason why they brought up the guy being at the car wash and getting raided again that day, that shows it's possible. That shows there is a repeated harm, which does make sense. I do agree there is a repeated harm. If you are a Mexican-looking dude or you are Mexican heritage running around LA, there's a very good chance you're going to get stopped. It's pretty high odds. And they point out here, he addresses the other issues here. And he says, second, ultimately, even if the government had a policy of making stops based on the factors prohibited by the court, the immigration officers might not rely only on those factors if and when they stop plaintiffs in the future. So yes, they could stop me for any number of reasons outside of those four. And then what happens? Oh, well, they say even if they're standing, the government has a fair prospect of succeeding on the Fourth Amendment issue. And it says to stop an individual for brief questioning about their immigration status. You must have reasonable suspicion that the individual's illegally in the U.S. It says reasonable suspicion is a lesser requirement than probable cause and considerably shorter than preponderance of the evidence standard. And guys, we're going to just do this real quick here. Okay, so I've done this before, but we're going to do this again just in case there's new people here in chat. Okay. So, we got to catch up on some things here. Jefferson Post says, it's not ISIS' fault that lady laid an upper decker. Oh. Hexy, or Hex, I'm not sure how you wish to pronounce that, says, I support the phone booking of French immigration policy. Yes. Why was the guy paying attention to that agent's rack? I don't know. Another says, can I pay you on a retainer in baked goods instead of money? No. I have accepted tools and other things before, but generally I don't. That's just really kind of sketch. Let's see here. Durna says anyone with a Midwest accent should be stopped under suspicion of being a Canadian advanced scout. Tech Guy Sal says I'm a citizen of Strongbadia. Oh, and then Green Caps Lock for $19.99. Thank you. Is saying bad math last night. Sleeping pills meant to be 63 total. I appreciate that. You didn't have to do that, Green Caps. I got where you were going. We were making fun of Darkside Phil, not making that much because we watched him for a minute. And I made more than it's like on locals. I made as much as he did. So self-fulfill. But thank you, Green Caps. I appreciate that very much. Thank you, though. BobTube for $2 Australian doodle says Ian, meaning iDubbbz, responded to Keno Casino. Whoa, buddy. Well, what is he gonna say? Yeah, my wife cucked me and ruined my life. So can you pay me in peens? No. Missouri Battle Flag saying, is there any parallel this would be a Terry stop? That's a good question. No, this is different. Remember, a Terry stop is a Terry stop becomes a stop because you're stopping the guys because you have suspicion criminal activity is afoot. And this is a little different because they're not like actively in a yes, they're making a crime, like they're committing a crime. But it's not the same type of crime where like in Terry, like the guys were like scoping out a store they were about to rob. And like, the detective was like, all right, get up on the wall. I think you guys have guns and you're getting ready to do something. That's different. These guys are just like fucking going about their day. Otherwise, you wouldn't. This isn't a Terry stop in that regard. And then a Terry stop, ultimately, you stop them and you're frisking them for weapons. So this isn't like a Terry stop in that regard. But you are suspecting them of the your reasonable suspicion of criminal activity, and that being their immigration status. So kind of, yeah, but not like the Terry stop mainly focuses on weapons. So I was trying to think about how you might be answering this. If I'm not even close to what you're trying to ask, let me know. But otherwise, not in that sense. Not in that sense. Anyways, getting back to this real quick, guys. When we're talking about these standards here, remember, you have beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay. And we'll say that's like 90%. That's like 90% sure. And then up here is 100. Okay, so why did I do it like that? I could just so we'll do like 100 right here. 100's beyond all doubt, which you're never going to get because we're never beyond all doubt. So beyond reasonable doubt is 90%. From there, you have a couple of other things. You have clear and convincing. And that's like 66% sure. You have preponderance. You have preponderance of the evidence. And that's 51% sure. And then going down further, you have probable cause. That's like 25% sure. Reasonable suspicion is even less than that. And you could come up with a thing like 15% sure. And then you obviously have no, and then that'd be 0. So think about that, guys. That's kind of what we're dealing with here. You're dealing with like, well, what is this thing here that we're talking about? So that is how we're getting to this. They say whether an officer has a reasonable suspicion depends on the totality of the circumstances. And that is always true. It's always a totality of the circumstances. It's a case-by-case basis. So once again, it's a totality of the circumstances. And these circumstances here include there are a high percentage of illegals in LA. They tend to gather in certain locations. Those individuals work certain kinds of jobs. And they say they are therefore especially attractive to immigrants. And many of those illegally in the LA area come from Mexico or Central America and don't speak much English. So it's pretty obvious. It's pretty straightforward. Ron saying, wait, not Runkle, not that Ian. No, iDubbbz Ian. Ian Joma. Ian Joma, or also formerly known as Ian Washburn, not Ian Runkle. Runkle's a good guy. Besides, the Keno Casino would not go after a fellow Canadian. They'd sweep. Although technically Anissa's Canadian, so. And it says, to be clear, apparent ethnicity alone cannot furnish suspicion. They say under this case law regarding immigration stops, notice it's an immigration stop is the big thing here. It's for an immigration stop, chat, not everything else. However, it can be a relevant factor. And they say under this court's precedents, not to mention common sense, these circumstances taken together can constitute reasonable suspicion. They say importantly, reasonable suspicion means only that the immigration officers may briefly stop the individual and inquire about status. If the person is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the U.S., that individual will be free to go after the brief encounter. Only if the person is illegally in the U.S. may the stop lead to further immigration proceedings. So they say, in short, the government has demonstrated a fair prospect of success on both standing and Fourth Amendment issues. And they say, in this interim posture, plaintiffs have not made a persuasive argument for this court to overrule the narrow line of either president, much less both of them, in Lyons and Brigoni Ponce. They say also point out the government has demonstrated that it would suffer irreparable harm. And they say in this case, given the millions of individuals illegally in the U.S., the myriad of significant economic and social problems caused by illegal immigration, and the government's efforts to prioritize stricter enforcement of the immigration laws enacted by Congress, they point out notably, however, the district court's injunction threatens contempt sanctions against officers who make brief investigative stops later found by the court to violate the injunction. And they point out this after the fact judicial second guessing can chill lawful immigration enforcement efforts. And they say on the two most critical factors, therefore, a stay is warranted. Now, you get to like the balance of the harms and the equities here. And they say that in the circumstance below, you borrow from Justice Scalia's apt words and from a different context. It says, judging whether a particular line is longer than a particular rock is heavy. Sometimes that's what you're stuck with. One party's harms may outweigh another's. And that's true. This is something Scalia wrote. It's like, well, this line is longer than that rock is heavier. Well, their harms are different. Their interest might be different. They might be fighting over an issue, but for different reasons. And then they say, moreover, in this case, it's difficult and policy-laden. The court has to balance the harms not only against the harms of the government, but also against the harms of third parties who otherwise would benefit from the challenged government actions. So he says, in any event, the equities tip in favor of the government. The interest of individuals who are illegally in this country of being stopped is not really a weighty interest that's legally recognized. Because if we operate it that way, well, every criminal has a massive overriding interest. It doesn't work that way. And he says, to be sure, I recognize that many illegal immigrants come to the U.S. to escape poverty and the lack of freedom and blah, 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 blah. He says, I understand they may feel somewhat misled by the varying approaches to immigration enforcement over the decades. Womp, womp. But the fact remains, under the laws passed, they are acting illegally by remaining in the U.S., at least unless Congress or the president choose some other legislative approach. And by illegally immigrating and remaining in the country, they are not only violating the laws, but also jumping in front of those non-citizens who follow the rules and wait in line. For those reasons, they are not substantial as a legal matter. And sorry, it says, for those reasons, the interest of illegal immigrants evading questioning are not substantial. And they point out that who are legally here, they may promptly go free after making clear to the officers they are U.S. citizens or otherwise legally in the U.S. And if you happen to be like, maybe you do need to have your card on you, maybe you do need to have some proof. This isn't I know people are like, papiers and bitte. It's like, when you come into the United States, papiers and bitte. Papers, please. Papiers and bitte era, I think is how you do it. Papiers and bitte era. Ira, I think. I don't remember. And it says, finally, although the dissent emphasizes the force used by immigration officers, that is not the issue in this case. The injunction is silent as to the use of force. So you don't have to worry about it. Let me see here. So the extent possible that excessive force has been used, the Fourth Amendment prohibits such, and remedies are available in federal court. And he says, I agree with the dissent on that point, but to reiterate, this injunction against brief stops does not address the use of force issue. And yes, if excessive force is being used, sue these motherfuckers. And they say in an immigration case, it's important to stress the proper role of the judiciary. The judiciary does not set immigration policy or decide enforcement priorities. It should come as no surprise that some administrations may be more or less fair than others. Article 3 judges may have views on which policy approach is better or fairer. I think this right here is a warning for the Kilmar Abrego Garcia, Judge Zinnis. It's not your fucking job to get in the way of this. This is a warning to the rest of the judiciary that we don't want to get involved. I think this is a very correct. This is a warning shot. This is a warning shot to the rest of the judges. Don't fuck around with the immigration issues. This is not your job. It's not your bailiwick. Conduct classes, when I was an exchange student, I had to carry on my passport and my residency permit with me at all times. Yeah, that can happen depending on the country you're in. They point out, but judges are not appointed to make policy calls. We merely ensure that the executive branch acts within the confines of the Constitution and federal statutes. And they say, as this court a few years ago declined to step outside our role and improperly compel greater enforcement of immigration laws. Notice they talk about United States v. Texas, Biden v. Texas. There's also the one in Arizona, Biden v. Arizona. Or no, it was Obama v. Arizona. They say, likewise, we must decline to step outside our roles here. He says in some, they've demonstrated a fair prospect of success on the merits. I therefore vote to grant the government's application. Now, here's the issue. There was a dissent. There was a dissent. Bama Law, you're saying there's no warning by SCOTUS to judges. It is a warning. Whether or not they do anything with it's another thing. Like Clarence Thomas, he warned about the injunctions. They could say, we don't appreciate this nonsense. Whether or not they do anything about it is a whole nother issue. Now, we get down to this dissent real quick, guys, and notice Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson are here. So what do we know? Well, this case above was 6-3. So it's 6-3. It's 6-3. But notice what is being done. They aren't just this idea the Fourth Amendment is gone or that democracy has fallen. Has it fallen? No. Do I think that that should be alone the criteria for stopping people? No, I don't agree with that. Do I understand the court's reasoning about it? Yes. I do. But I don't think that's the court's necessary only thing they can do there. I think there's more, I think they are allowed to do this. Yes, Artzakia forever. Yes. Yes, papers, please. That's a fun game. When I get I gotta get my capture card. We'll play like games like that one night. It'll be fun, even though it's old now. It's old now. Like everybody's played it, but we'll play that one night. Robin Hood says, I got my papers checked in Estonia. Yeah, most countries will check your shit routinely. So, Meme Copium says, you took a tool for payment? Well, hey, I mean, why do you think I called you that one day and asked you for advice on how you do it? Stacy says, will you come see me in a Vegas jail? You're going to have to pay for the flight, but yes. Missouri Battle Flag says, so you're supposed to have articulable suspicion, so it's the speaking Spanish working at the car wash. Yeah, well, it's not only that, but if you look like you look Central American, yeah. Yeah. Derna says, our ancestors ran towards poverty and danger to be free. Those coming to escape poverty will bring serfdom with them. Yes. Well, they already are. They're bringing destruction with them. Ag is saying that a few tards on X were trying to say these opinions were in private. What do you mean these opinions are in private? I'm confused. What? Like, what the fuck? These opinions were private and not for everyone to read. It's like, I don't understand. I don't understand what they're getting at there. So, I don't know that one. I don't know about that one. So let me see here. Memes like, you rat with the kamikaze felt. Yes. Yes. And Access, it's not our fault they're stereotypes. Correct. Derna says, when I was stationed in Germany, I got stopped because of my haircut. It was obvious I was an American soldier and had a valid reason to be in Germany. Yeah. But yes, if you stand out, they'll talk, you'll get talked to. Marlene says, I was in Russia in 1998 and never once asked for papers. That's true. Certainly, like you could get through not running into immigration or not running into police, but in a country like Russia, you better have papers on you. Internal travel documents, all that stuff is critical. Bama Law says, did Maryland man ever freaking get felted? Damn, he's never leaving. Well, right now he's being offered that he's going to get deported to Swaziland, also known as Eswatini, currently. But yes, he's going to Swaziland, but he's not there yet. William Wallace says, talking about Supreme Court opinions, both supporting and dissenting. Yes, we're going to do that. Meme says, tourists come to Japan and don't realize you need to carry an ID at all times here. Really? I didn't know that. Will the police just come up to you and ask for your papers like that? Interesting. Bella is saying, and we'll talk about this on Thursday night. So this is regarding that Ukrainian lady who got murdered on the subway in Charlotte. I understand it's like a tram or whatever, but you get the point. In some states, and it's not just southern states, there's like 10 or so states right now still. To be a magistrate, you do not need a law degree or be a licensed attorney. So that's not a lot of states have eliminated that. Ohio, that's never been an issue for as long as I can remember. Like in Ohio, if you're a magistrate, you are a licensed attorney. There's a good number of states that's not the case. There's a good number of states that's not the case. Mm-hmm. Yep. Magistrates were traditionally seen as you were like a lay person, and you did some legal roles, but you operated as a lay person, and that was kind of your benefit. You were providing the lay person side of things. So, yeah. Elfire Ava is saying, good to see you, by the way. He's saying, it's always good to carry your ID on you, regardless of what country you live in. That's true, but here in America, it's not as critical. But yes, if you're going to foreign countries, yes, keep identification on you. It might save your ass. Let's see here. Keopath says, I got stopped plenty of times in Japan for my gaijin card. Old people will call the cops because they see a foreigner. He figured that Japan would hand out Pokemon cards, yes. Meme says sometimes they conduct searches of your property without probable cause as well, but you can trick them out of doing it sometimes, although it's never happened to me. You don't want them to come in and find your Dino Studio running. That would be funny here. Search of bags is what I meant by property, not house. Oh, okay. Ooh. I was gonna say they just come and toss your house. Holy shit. Yes, freedom is hard on the wallet. All right, guys. So let's get back into let's get onto the issues here with the dissent, because this dissent is just absolutely histrionic. So they talk about in early June, the immigration enforcement raids. During the raids, teams of armed and masked agents pulled up to car washes, tow yards, farms, and parks, seizing individuals often before asking a single question. I agree that the militarization of police is not good. I don't like it. And they go through this and notice a bunch of this. You're like, well, we're not going to read this. We already read this part. We agree there's 4 factors here, but instead of allowing district court to consider these troubling allegations in the normal course, they point out that they didn't give the district court a chance to consider them. Not true. The stay of the TRO. So the TRO is gone. They're not saying that there's no case. They're just saying right now we're not, we're going to make them do it in the normal course. The TRO is not in the normal course of action, in the normal course of a case. It's a drastic remedy. So it's funny how they phrase this, isn't it? They're not letting them take the normal course of action. Wait, is the normal course of action now to you guys TROs? That's very telling. Very telling. And they say, this decision is yet another grave misuse of our emergency docket. Is it really? Or is this because you guys have abused the TRO powers so much that we have to use the docket? Just saying. Oh, hold on 1 second. No, you're fine, sweetheart. Sorry, our lovely producer was feeding me some information. Apparently, the Lisa Cook dismissal has been blocked right now temporarily. It says, rather than stand idly by while our freedoms are lost, I dissent. That's it? Our freedoms are being lost? And this is the funniest part about it. Our freedoms are being lost. You think our freedoms are being lost. And your first thought is, I'm just going, no, our freedoms are being lost. Our freedoms are being lost. That's what if our freedoms are being lost, there's only one answer to freedoms being lost. So they move on. They talk about these people here. They focus on Jason Gavita. She focuses on Jason Gavita, which once again, yeah, he's a U.S. citizen. This one's one of the more compelling ones. They point out though that he offered up his ID. That ID was never returned, which is a pain in the ass to go get your ID if it's been disappeared. They talk about once again the car wash that was happened. They point out that U.S. citizen Jorge Viramontes. And notice that wasn't in the order from the court. And it says in the 9 days, they returned multiple times. They asked him if he was a citizen. He replied as a dual U.S. citizen. He supplied his California driver's license. They said that was insufficient once again, because anybody can have a California driver's license. They took him to a warehouse area for questioning. He was detained for 20 minutes, which is relatively minor, while they made calls to verify his citizenship, and they drove him back to work. Other Operation at Large encounters have included more force. They talk about, once again, going to get these guys. And notice in Glendale, agents with guns jumped out of cars at a Home Depot. It's like, yeah, they're going after people. And that's what happens. And it says, the operation has sparked panic and fear across Los Angeles and its surrounding areas. Only if you're in fucking trouble. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't give a shit. So they talk about Gavita and Viramontes, and they go through all these guys, and they explain why they think they're entitled to stuff here. But this is we go through all this. This is just more whining and crying. More whining and crying. More whining and crying. Now they finally get to what they want here. And they point out the government and now the concurrence, meaning the entire government, has all but declared that all Latinos, U.S. citizens or not, who work low-wage jobs are fair game to be seized at any time, taken away from work, and held until they find proof of their legal status to the aided satisfaction. Well, that's normally how it goes if you're being held till an aided satisfaction. As a district court found, the government does not meaningfully contest the present evidence reveals that the seizures occurred based solely upon the four enumerated factors. The government now asks the court to bless that conduct, at least temporarily, by issuing a stay. It says the government has not demonstrated the necessary likelihood of success. And this is where, once again, they say it's not fair. One of the big things they bring up here is a set of facts that cannot constitute reasonable suspicion if it depicts a large category of presumably innocent people. Yeah, there's a lot of fucking people. There's a lot of fucking people. So, there are a lot. They point out that Mexican ancestry alone did not constitute reasonable suspicion to support stops by Border Patrol agents. Even near the border, because a lot of native-born and naturalized citizens have the physical characteristics identified with Mexican ancestry. And they talk about another case, Brown v. Texas, that standing in an alley in a neighborhood frequented by drug users did not rise to suspicion because the activity was no different from the activity of other pedestrians in that neighborhood. So yeah, standing in an alleyway in a high drug area is not reasonable suspicion. But if it's 3 a.m. and you're the only one there and you're hiding in a shadow, that can be reasonable suspicion. So they point out that they say the district court held correctly the four factors are no more indicative of legal presence in the country than of legal presence. And they say allowing the seizure of any Latino-speaking Spanish person at a car wash in LA tramples the constitutional requirement that officers must have particularized an objective basis for suspecting the person stopped for criminal activity. Once again, I agree with the idea, but we're dealing with the immigration context. So it's a bit different in how you could particularize things. Because generally speaking, not that many people can commit a crime. I suspect this guy of robbing a house. How many people actually could have broken into a house? Not many. How many people could be here illegally? A fuckload. Do I agree it's a bit of an issue here? How do you balance this out? Yes. Is this the best thing possible? No. But is the government allowed to do it based on what's going on here? Yes. Is this the end of democracy? No. And they say that the government and the concurrence, meaning the majority, brushes aside the court's precedent with an appeal to probability, arguing the high prevalence of undocumented immigrants should enable agents to stop a relatively broad range of individuals. Without even a citation, the government asserts that 10% of the population in the Central District is unlawfully present. So it is inevitable and unremarkable that immigration officers would target any Latino person, or any person speaking accent in English, or any person at a particular type of job, or any person working a low-wage job in the greater LA area. I mean, really? I mean, is it really that hard to assume? Like, without a citation, yeah, but are we really going to challenge this idea that there's less than 10% of the population is doing this? Or is it legal? Are we really going to fight that? Are we really going to fight this argument here? Because that's, yeah. Yeah, no, it's, yeah. And it points out that never mind that nearly 47% of the Central District population identifies as Hispanic or Latino. Okay. Never mind that over 37% of LA County speak Spanish at home, and over 55% speak a language other than English. Okay, yes, but what are the other languages? Um, if you're speaking Armenian in Glendale, they're not going to fucking confront you. If you're speaking Russian or Chinese, they're not going to confront you. I do agree. Yes, it's all progressive commie shit saying it's racist. Think illegals could get better jobs. That's true. That is the bigotry of low expectations. Um, you want to know? I'll show you what language is. Yes, the Amish around you speak German. They speak German, but many of them speak Pennsylvania Dutch, which is not exactly German. It's a very different thing here. Yeah. Yes, they're not speaking fucking Esperanto either. Yes. Seller says the Armenians at Glendale is common knowledge. I mean, if you watch The Shield, it is. So, I'm going to say, of course, aggregate statistics cannot substitute for any individualized suspicion that the Fourth Amendment requires. And they point out that the court rejected the argument in Bergoni Ponce. There, the government asserted it could stop drivers of apparent Mexican ancestry in border areas because the areas are Mexican and mostly the border area private vehicles. And they say, unlike today, that court rightly rejected the government's argument because they would cover a large volume of legitimate traffic. And they say a broad statistical approach to reasonable suspicion would subject the residents of these and other areas to potentially unlimited interference with the Border Patrol. Now, they point out the government moves beyond background demographics and argues that the four factors limited could, in some scenarios, give rise to reasonable suspicion. For example, the government, if agents had intelligence that a workplace was known to have hired 100 undocumented individuals, the prior week, immigration enforcement officials might well have reasonable suspicion to stop a person at that site. And that's true. They would, I would argue. This argument fares no better than the first. I don't agree with that. I disagree. They say a seizure on those hypothetical facts would not rest solely on the four factors, but would incorporate an additional probative fact. The intelligence about hiring recent employees. They say in any event, this bears little resemblance to the government's hypothetical. There is no basis for it. It said, indeed, the government submitted no evidence about what facts agents relied upon to conduct most of the seizures documented on the record. They say rather its declaration suggests that they generally targeted locations on the types of businesses that were there. So, yes, Adam says 100 is okay, but 101 not okay. Yeah. Bamala saying Pennsylvania Dutch is a dialectical way of saying Deutsch. It's just how it sounds when they say it. Public service Berg announcement. I mean, I've listened to Pennsylvania Dutch being spoken. It is not German. Like, you definitely know you're not speaking German. You're not speaking Dutch either, and those are mutually intelligible. You're speaking another, like, third path. You can kind of understand some things here and there, but speaking Pennsylvania Dutch, like when the Amish are getting down, oh, you have no idea what the fuck is going on. At least my experience. So, check your Discord for all the DMs languages California supports. Ooh, okay, thank you. Let's see here. What do we got? What do we got here? Here's all the other. Oh shit. Okay. Thank you. So this is from Keopathic. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. It says this is the unemployment system, the California Employment Developmental Department. And what are we looking at here? Well, this is all the different languages you can use. So you have English and Spanish, Armenian, Cantonese, Korean, Mandarin, Tagalog for the Philippines, and Vietnamese. Yes. So that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Oh, and Sarah Beck says, read my chat. Which did you put another thing in here? Hold on. What did you say here? Oh, okay. Hold on. Lone Star Medic says, Tiaro felted. Give me a suffer, Sean. Suffer! Suffer, Mexican. Suffer. There you go. There you go. It's Tagalog. Oh, I thought it was Tagalog. Okay, well. Tagalog. Okay, well, the Filipinos are going to get mad at me, so. Uh, but anyways, there you go. There you go. Those are the. And then TTY if you're deaf. So. So yes, those are, California has a lot of languages. A lot of languages. I am so happy because I am a proud, yes. I always just call it tag along, yes. I am so happy because I am a proud Tejano. They keep moving on here, and it says, they also, this is just absolute, just whining and whining and whining and whining and whining. Now, they point out these findings show the plaintiffs, by doing nothing more than going to work every day, are likely to be seized by agents who are targeting their workplaces in accordance with the government's practice. Mm-hmm. They also point out that the idea that they're doing this, using their experience to stop suspected illegals, is garbage. And they say hypothetically they could. The evidence in this case, however, feels the government is likely to continue relying solely on those 4 factors because that is what agents are currently authorized and instructed to do. And that's a fair argument that this is all they're using. This is all they're using here, and it makes sense. It makes sense. This is actually an argument I would agree with. They're never going to change. They're just going to stick with this. And yeah, they probably are. At no point do they say it suggested plans to change operations. They say the government filed a stay so it could continue relying solely on these 4 factors. Now, they bring up the scope of the injunctions and arguing the district-wide injunction violates this court's holdings in Trump v. Casa. Remember, we went over that. And it says the court found a district-wide injunction was necessary to afford the plaintiffs complete relief. So, and they're saying that's fine here. And I agree. This is thankfully only district-wide. It wasn't nationwide. And I think the court was smart to do that because they knew they were going to get thumped. But, yeah. Now, once again, she talks about the likelihood of success, the elements that are necessary here, the harm being suffered. And they say the equities therefore lie with the plaintiffs. Countless people in LA have been grabbed, thrown to the ground, and handcuffed simply because of their looks, their accents, and the fact they make a living by doing manual labor. It says today the court needlessly subjects countless more to these same indignities. It's outrageous. Once again, Chad, it's outrageous behavior. And they say it's troubling for another reason. It is entirely unexplained. Is it really? In the last 8 months, this court's appetite to circumvent the ordinary appellate process and weigh on issues has grown exponentially. It's because the court's been causing problems with Trump GGG, Wilcox, Noam v. Doe, US v. Schilling, Trump v. Boyle. Like, there's all kinds of problems here that are being caused because of all these goddamn courts. But the problem is here, these situations they're claiming are too much. They're saying here the district court will soon convene a hearing on the motions for a preliminary injunction and class certification with the benefit of a more fulsome record on which to evaluate the claims. It could still do that, just not right now. Neither the district court nor the parties will know whether the majority believe the key issue is standing the merits or the scope of relief, any which could have been the base of the order. Yeah, well, shit happens. And they say for these issues, it will be anyone's guess whether the majority thought there were evidentiary deficiencies, legal errors, or a combination of both. This demands more. Well, we're not the ones who cause all the fucking problems here. Once again, you guys got greedy, so the court's reacting. So, and it says the Fourth Amendment protects every individual's right to be free from arbitrary interference by law enforcement officers. After today, that may no longer be true for those who happen to look a certain way, speak a certain way, and appear to work at a certain type of job that pays very little. Because this is unconscionably irreconcilable with our nation's constitutional guarantees, I dissent. So, once again, chat, like I said, is this the end of the world? No. Am I happy with this? No. Do I think that the government could be doing something different? Sure. But that's kind of where we are right now. That's kind of where we are. So, Georgian is another neat language. It looks like Elfish. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So, Project H is saying yes, they did. Project H is also saying 86. You know who, and you know what 86 means. Yeah. So once again, like I said, is this something that democracy is over? No. Do I like the idea that this is solely the factors they're using? No. Should they be able to articulate a little more information? Yes. You're going to catch most of these guys anyway at some point or another. But do I think that this alone is the best way to go about it? No. Is it within the law? Yes. Does that mean that's acceptable to me? No, it's not. But this is not the end of democracy. It's not the end of the Fourth Amendment either. So, like I said, people don't need to freak out. People don't need to freak out about this. Meme Copium says, the cops lost my ID for like an hour when I withdrew my driver's license. All your car stuff is handled at the police station in Japan. Ooh, interesting. No DMV. You think they would love that because it's like a bureaucracy. They could have more stamps and you could be like, you present your papers. Like, it's like the business card. You're like, stamp my license. Nick Kreuzer has been a member for 17 months. Thank you, Nick. Saying Sam Brown from The Whitest Kids You Know had the best take on Latinos. Yes. Yes, he did. Amos Currency's been a member for 12 months. Says, no, deport the high-wage Latinos too. Yes. Send them all back. Jefferson Post says, I hear Massachusetts is going to get a big dose of ice soon. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Lone Star Medic says, Mexican forced to be Texan for over 100 years. Well, howdy or hola. Bama Law says, Safa Mexicanos. Yes. Safa. Ilwar is saying, the issue is we want to be able to bring in these people and there's no effective way to remove them. Really making them a type of class made political, disregard the law. Yeah, and that becomes the issue here. That becomes the issue at this point. How do you handle this? Because remember, as I talked with Rob Knorr last night, this turns into an issue of just fucking admit you don't want anybody being deported on the left. All these immigration advocates and we want this, we want that. Just admit you don't want anybody getting fucking deported and you want open borders. I'm going to disagree with you, but just admit that's what you want. Just admit that's what you want. Like, just be honest. Be honest, guys. Be fucking honest.
Let's be honest.
Be very honest. Be very honest. Driving is more of a privilege in Japan. Yes, it is. Reza says debate this with Natalie. I mean, if you're on the one side, like it's the end of the world, I don't know how you can convince somebody it's not. Would I do a Bronca style? No, I don't do things like Bronca does. So, no, that Bronca does things Bronca style. That's why it's called Bronca style. Derna says, but Sean, who will pick up the DoorDash? Yes, Zach is also saying it's almost like if the left didn't leave the border open for 4 years, this wouldn't be a problem. I know. It's almost like, wow, if all those caravans had never showed up, we wouldn't have to deal with this right now. And then obscure crimes, but remember 15 months. Thank you, Ron and Tony. Says we changed our name and our content. Still the same, Ron and Tony. Yes. Guys, if you remember obscure outdoor destinations, they are here. They changed up their stuff, doing a lot of body cam and crime related stuff. Give them a look. They're doing some great stuff out there. They're down in Florida. So it's Florida man and Florida woman. Access, but Sean, you can get a Rolex. Like, maybe. Not going to happen like that. I could buy a new Subaru, yeah. If Reagan did an amnesty in 1986 and Prop 187 wasn't overturned, if, yeah. As I remember when I was in ROTC, my freshman year of college, Master Sergeant Strange, he said, if we're a fifth, we'd all be fucked up by now. I was like, that's pretty fucking good. JMK says, share their link, please, blue persons. Yes. Nick says, you just have enough time to take your wife to Disneyland for the 500th time. Oh. Sean can't get a Rolex until he shits himself at least twice. You guys are not nice. Here. Be nice, chat. But yes, guys, that is the situation. That is how this is unfolded. People are panicking. I know people all over Twitter are, this is the end of the fucking world. Yeah, no. It's not like that. Is it, like I said, is it pleasant? No. Do I like how it's being done? No. But that's it's not the end of it here. Let's see here. Oh. The Ninth Circuit gave Trump a win on the Posse Comitatus case with the California National Guard. Wow. We'll cover that. We might cover that tomorrow, chat. There might be some legal stuff to cover tomorrow. We'll go through that. That's going to be interesting. I may say that till Thursday. I'm not sure yet. But yes, the National Guard case is alive. Thank you to Kat for sending that to me. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah. So that's interesting. That is interesting. Let me see here. Hold on. Why is it not working? I need to save this for later. I had a folder. There we go. So once again, like I said, guys, is this the worst thing ever? No. And is the court probably going to distinguish this going forward that immigration situations are the only time this happens? Yes. Now, if you get a Democrat majority or a liberal majority on the court, will this probably get overturned in the future? You'd like to think so, but many times in history, you would see Ginsburg and Scalia on the same side of topics involving criminal rights, and they weren't very friendly to defendants. They were very pro-state. So who knows really at that point what's going to happen, if that happens. That's a long way away. May our 6-member majority have a long and healthy reign. Knock on wood. Talk about our elector friends in Michigan. That will be there for later, too. That'll be for later too. That's a good one. But yes, guys, the false electric case in Michigan, I'll just get a little preview of it, was dismissed for all 15 people. The big L for Gretchen Whitmer and her scumbag commie attorney general. So that is a good news, chat. That is some very good news that's out there. What about the SEALs in North Korea? That whole thing is weird. Apparently the SEALs went to go infiltrate and bug something. It's like that's pretty cool though. That's pretty cool. Not gonna lie, I think that's pretty fun. What about the South Koreans losing their shit about the Hyundai seizure? Well, it sounds like a lot of those guys had their paperwork wasn't in order, and they just like showed up and did whatever the fuck they wanted. So, yes, Hyundai is building a plant in, I think it's in Georgia. They were building it, and ICE rounded up a ton of dudes because their papers weren't in order or they had overstayed visas. And it's like, well, guess what? South Korea is really fucking brutal about immigration policy. Talk to Jeff about it. Jeff would talk about it, or if you hear Mindset talk about it, they're fucking brutal about that shit in enforcing immigration policy. So I don't really feel bad. I don't feel bad. Ag says the feds might be going to the death penalty for the Ukraine murderer in North Carolina. Ooh, interesting. Yes, I would recommend watching Council on Future Conflict tomorrow, guys. They'll be covering what's going on in Rachel, along with everything else that's been occurring lately in our world. You got Scott and Watcher, Joe Dolio, Stan, the whole gang out there. Those guys are a dearth of knowledge. And then all the other guests they have come on from time to time, like true guys who have been there, done that, bought the t-shirt in their areas of the world. I highly recommend it. If you guys can watch it. Yes, this is a great thing out there. Yes. No American company in South Korea has ever been busted using illegal Americans ever. Yes. It says, yes, get Jeff on. I'm like, I caught myself. Yes, guys. Do commercial fishermen in Best Korea work at night? Yeah. The North Carolina guy is going to get NGRI if the stuff his sister said is true. Just because you're schizophrenic doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get an NGRI. It depends on a lot of different things. So it's tough to get an NGRI. Sweet Tooth Fairy says, have they decided about Proctor yet? No, Trooper Proctor, he's still got 3 days of his hearing left. They have 3 more days of hearing being held in October. So that's a long-term thing. Marlene says, I found Sean through the council. Well, thank you, Marlene. I'm glad you're here. Spuggun saying NGRI, meaning not guilty by reason of insanity. I'm a schizophrenic, and so am I. Yes, Stabby, we're gonna cover that. Think we might cover that on Thursday. Short story, guys, though, the DOJ is backing and is going to war with the state of Illinois over its gun laws. So that'll be some good stuff there. Are you holding a seance? No. I wouldn't have enough cigars and whiskey for Jeff to properly want to come back here anyway. So NGRI or not, that guy shouldn't be on the streets again. I agree. And yeah, he's clearly never going to be back on the streets again. Clearly. Ags is about freaking time. Yeah, we're going to get to it, guys. There's a bunch of stuff to get to. There's a bunch of stuff to get to coming up here and going forward. Will from Texas says, speaking of gun laws, what do you think about the push to make it illegal for trans people to have guns? I mean, here's the issue. It's funny because now you see the left going all out, oh, well, they like the Second Amendment now. But it's honestly, when it comes to it, I understand that not all trans are in this position, but I don't wish to break bread with revolutionary communists nor their fellow travelers. And the idea that by me defending their rights somehow make me any noble or virtuous when they eventually get power and will intend to shove their gnarled cock up my ass and try to put all of us face down in a ditch somewhere, saying, "Well, I held my principles before you take one to the back of the head," is not really something I think is a good idea. So, just saying, just saying. JMK says, "Remember, red flags go both ways." Well, they've already. That's the thing, though. Like the first, like Maryland, a guy already got murdered with his red flag because of his sister-in-law. So like the red flags have already been abused. I know, like it. There's tons of stories of it. So the thing is, like, well, this might happen. It's already happening. So I'm just saying, like, the game's already afoot. The game's already afoot. So Torgo says, should trans people not get due process rights either? I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you walked into a gun store and if you walked into the hardware store in 1787 with a indigo colored wig and straw stuffed into your shirt and said, "My dear sir, give me a firearm so I can be the finest of women," they wouldn't have sold you the gun. They just thought you're fucking crazy. So, just saying. Just saying. Yeah, they've already tried to do this to veterans already. That if you were if you had a payee for your VA benefits, you were declared incompetent and they stripped you of everything. Not just your gun rights, but all your other rights. This has already happened. This has already happened, though. Yes, it works both ways. This is the fucking other way. Yes. Yes, that's the thing. We're already like, what do you think we've been dealing with for the past 15 years? Like, oh, well, something can happen. Like, they went after companies because they use credit cards. Like Operation Choke Point. Like guys, the game's already afoot. They're at the door already. The wolves are prowling around the door already. So yeah, they scream for action every time, so they got what they wanted. Yeah. Help do stuff about the mentally ill. Okay, well, we are. Not these ones. No. Well, it's what you wanted. Yes, the violence has already started. And as I talked about with Rob Noor last night, and Ryan brought it up, when does the vengeance cycle end? I don't know, but we're now in the position to use it after it's been used against us. So shit happens, man. We didn't start this fight. It's like Rambo. I didn't draw first blood. We didn't draw first blood. But the fight has commenced. So get to fighting or get the hell out of the way. Postal Joe says, saw you on Rob Noor's show a few nights ago and enjoyed it. So now I'm here. Well, thank you, Postal. I'm glad you're here. Joe says, did you start reading that SBS book? Yes, I have. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I got partway through it, but it's very short, but I didn't get to finish all of it yet. It's very interesting. I still there's a guy in the SBS, like one of their absolute legends name is Dick Holden. It's like good old Dicker holding it down. So Stabby says, I don't know my message went through though, but what about the precedent already set by restricting medical cannabis users from firearm ownership of mind-altering hormones is fine? Well, there's that too. There's all kinds of weird shit there. Zero Buck says, who is us/we? I don't know. The royal we. The royal us. It's good to see you, man. Toger the White says an SBS book. Special boat service book. He got one of the things that people have been sending in. He sent me this book he had found about the special boat service operating in the Mediterranean. And that's one of the original British Special Forces units, along with the SAS in World War II. So, did I see that criminals are getting let out on the streets if they're found mentally incompetent to stand trial? No, but I haven't seen that. But I mean, at some point, you got, what do you do with them? You can't just like, if they're mentally incompetent, depending on the trial or the case, yeah, it's like, well, we got to cut them loose. Can't keep people forever unless there's a lot going on there. So, but no, I don't think I've seen that yet. But I'll put that down as something to look into. So, then Chell is saying, then they find a kid with a fuck ton of guns. I mean, they usually do. They usually do. Make asylums great again. Yeah, well, that's the thing. We had asylums, and then they all got destroyed and emptied. So, that's that is what we have to deal with now. So, all right, guys. Well, it is just now 11 o'clock. We are going to wrap this up here. We will be live again, same time. Well, actually, probably a little earlier tomorrow, right around 8, maybe a little earlier. There's two things we might be going through. I'm still kind of debating between them. It might be a combination of the Seattle suing Glock and a couple firearms manufacturers. And also, in addition to that, there was a unique lawsuit, patent suit that got decided recently involving PSA and Shield Arms regarding the use of their M&P magazines that had extra capacity in them. And the court finally made a ruling on that recently. And I think we might do those tomorrow as far as stuff to look at. And then Friday, I think we'll be into... I think we're going to go back into Patrick Tomlinson. I keep saving Fridays like it's lol cow stuff. But yeah, I think we might be on to some Patrick Tomlinson stuff. And God forbid if Russell Greer puts something together in the next couple of days. We'll take a look at that. I was also thinking we'd take a look at Matthew Harden's amicus brief in the Cox v. Sony case. I'm not sure yet. We got a bunch of stuff we're sorting out for the weekend here, but I just wanted to give you guys a heads up what we're thinking about. Let's see here. Is Seattle suing over Horsecom? No. Isn't Sig getting sued for breach of contract? It wouldn't surprise me. Speaking of guns, have I seen the recent influx of German surplus 226s? No. Where is that at? Where can you find those? And 228s? No. I got a 228 for $600. Dang, that's nice. Access, cover the Burka 1 and Burka 2 patent cases. It's hilarious to me. Well, send me a thing about it. Sula's saying, is it Lolcow Friday now? I mean, yeah, maybe. James Reese says, we covered the Ukraine thing. No, that's going to be for Thursday night. That's some quality content for Thursday. Atlantic Firearms is doing it. Oh, okay. I'll take a look. Thank you. Interesting. Sig has killed a guy. Yeah, Sig's killed a lot of people, injured a lot of people. So, all right, guys. So with that said, I will see you guys tomorrow. And remember, until next time, just because you did it does not mean you're guilty. It doesn't. It does not mean you're guilty. Although if you are a Hispanic guy working at a car wash and your English your Anglais is no bueno. You're gonna have a bad day. I'm just warning you now. All right, guys. Good night, chat. Good night and take care.
Weapons, blacksmithing, and models of planes, esoteric works, and even some trains. Much merriment had while drinking White Claws, tips on hunting, and even talking the law. Whatever you do, just don't talk to cops, even when they nab you on illegal stops. Just 'cause you did it doesn't mean you're guilty, but please talk to a local attorney. Was that the fat guy?